Well, greetings everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Dwayne Butcher with Flex Renovation, and I'm thrilled to kick off what we're calling Tech Week, which is a series of webinars designed to keep you and your teams on the leading edge of what's next. If you're not aware of the other webinars that we're doing in this series, you can find them by visiting flexrenovation.com/events. Just a few points of orientation before we dive in. Today's webinar is being recorded. We have a large number of people that are going to be watching this on demand, so we're going to record this. We'll make this recording available to those of you who are watching live. We'll make it available to you in the coming days, along with a PDF of the presentation that's used today. So while we did set aside a full hour for today's session, it's likely that we are not going to need all of that time, but just know that that does leave time for questions. So if you have any, please submit them using the QA button that you'll find at the top of the screen on your toolbar. As you have, even though I may hold off on asking these questions until the end of our time, go ahead and submit them as they come to mind. That'll allow us to kind of filter through what's there and queue them up to ask of our presenter. So for now, let me briefly introduce our presenter today, Natalie Roberts. Natalie serves on the Enterprise Solutions team here at Flexware and has established an expertise in our topic today, robotic process automation. Natalie is a Microsoft certified Power Platform solution architect, along with several other certifications, Natalie, that I'm not going to run through, but she is well certified. So Natalie, I really do appreciate you being with us here today and sharing some of your expertise. I think I'll just turn it over to you and have you take it away.
All right, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dwayne. Just want to confirm, can everybody see my screen? All right. So thank you everyone for attending the Automate or Die Real World RPA Solutions webinar today. Really excited to talk about RPA as a whole. And so we'll just jump right in. Here's the agenda. I'll start off with an introduction, although Dwayne kind of did that for me. I just want to review kind of what RPA is, so we're all on the same level playing field. The Power Platform tools that we utilize here at Flexware, how to use these tools and why ultimately RPA is beneficial. And then I'll share two real-world examples. The first one is already recorded, but the second one is live. And so I'll talk through both of those processes as you see them. And then I'll kind of give an overview, a little deeper dive into some of the other tools that we have as well. And then I will leave some time for some Q&A towards the end. So what is RPA? Why care about it? I mean, you know, it's a very interesting topic. I'd like to start with what it's not. You know, what is RPA not supposed to do, and you know, kind of alleviate some of these conceptions that people have around robotic process automation. So RPA is not designed to take your job. It's not designed to compete against you. In fact, it's actually the opposite. It's supposed to come alongside and aid you in doing what you're doing day to day in your work tasks. And I really like this image of this little robot over here because it shows you know, each of these words and why they're important. So the robotic aspect of RPA is really when you, the person, are sitting at a computer and you are just doing things over and over again. It's very robotic-like. And so, you know, that's kind of where that term comes from. Process is, you know, self-explanatory. You have business processes that you're working through that you follow directions and rules for to accomplish an end goal. And automation is intended to do things without your intervention. So RPA is not designed, you know, again, to replace you. You know, we need humans to think critically about things. And, you know, ultimately, we want to, you know, look at these processes and say, you know, hey, this is something, you know, we have all of this new technology. We have AIs and, you know, machine learning. And, you know, ultimately we want to come alongside and say, hey, this is what we can do to help you. So it's not to replace you. Okay, so that's kind of what robotic process automation is, at a very surface level. Um, and so where I'd like to start is understanding the suite of tools that we utilize here at Flexware. We are a Microsoft partner, so we utilize Microsoft's Power Platform. And as you can see here, there are about 5 main components that make up the Power Platform. Power BI, since it's first, I'll start with that one. We actually have a whole dedicated business intelligence team here at Flexware. And we actually have one of those webinars tomorrow. So if you're interested in a deeper dive, please check that out. But it's really about business analytics and helping the company see, here's where we're at. This is the data we have. It organizes things in there are a lot of expert level things that you can do with your data transformation and whatnot. So that's kind of what Power BI is intended for is your business analytics. I primarily work with Power Apps and Power Automate. And Power Apps, as the name would say, is applications. You can create intuitive user interfaces that allow reach for your company or external users to access that data that you may need, or you can host forms and you can track things through these applications. And so it really allows you to put together quick solutions for companies that allow others to interact with that data. Power Automate, there are actually 2 components here. There's Power Automate, and we also have Power Automate Desktop. Now, the difference between the two, Power Automate uses REST APIs. If you're unfamiliar with what an API is, it's an application program interface. And in simple terms, it just allows us to communicate with other systems. So Power Automate typically uses REST APIs to communicate with ERP systems, enterprise resource planning systems, and other external data. You have SharePoint, there's D365, finance and operations, and many more. But Power Automate is kind of something you can think of as like back end in the shadow automation. There's a trigger, there's something that happens to trigger this flow. There's a sequence of steps, and then that end goal is completed. And this happens without you having to see anything or really worry about the transactions that are happening in the background. And then I did mention Power Automate Desktop, and this is one of the demonstrations that I'll talk about, and you'll see a video of this and how this works. But Power Automate Desktop is really the interactions on your computer. You can see the mouse moving around, and it uses your mouse and your keyboard as you would when you're interacting with the systems on your computer. So that's kind of what I would say is more of a classic RPA system or tool. And it helps when you don't have those REST APIs or connections that are automatically available. This can be used when you're kind of in a rush to accomplish something, and it helps you access those interfaces and accomplish those tasks for the business. And then we have 2 more, Power Virtual Agents and Power Pages. Interestingly, as Microsoft has recognized, chatbots are becoming more standardized. It wasn't just a few weeks ago, my family and I were applying for a townhome, and I actually called the place and, I was hoping to speak with someone, and I was actually redirected to a chatbot. And it started texting me, and I thought that was really interesting. So Power Virtual Agents is a tool that you can use really in lieu of having a customer support there, and you can also couple these things together. So Power Virtual Agents can be coupled with Power Automate. A good example of this could be, you have a website and maybe somebody goes to it, at 2 o'clock in the morning and they're wanting to retrieve a statement or track a request or something. The Power Virtual Agents chatbot can actually retrieve that information using Power Automate. So there's just a really unique set of tools here that work really well together. And then lastly, there's Power Pages. And this is really for you to create a customizable website for external facing clients typically. There are templates and you can do low code, no code, and you can throw together a website very quickly. And people use this for customer portals oftentimes. And then if you'll notice here at the bottom, there are 3 more items down here: data connectors, AI builder, and Dataverse. The data connectors actually come in 3 different forms. There are standard connectors, premium connectors, and customizable ones. And the custom ones are when you run into an instance and maybe the system or resource that you're trying to work with doesn't have documentation or availability to create or to work with an existing API. And so what you can do is if you have access to the right information, you can create a custom API and you can connect to that data. So those data connectors are typically utilized in Power Automate. And the next thing is the AI builder. Just like how it sounds, there is an artificial intelligence solution area inside the Power Platform. And this is where you can build AI models. And this is really helpful in data scraping and checking data and extracting those data points and verifying that you're really retrieving the right kind of information. And this is helpful when you have a high-paced environment and you need to catch errors in real time. So that is what AI Builder is in just a nutshell. And Dataverse is a database. You can do different business rules and within the database. It's cloud hosted and very secure. And these items kind of live on top of Dataverse. It's very convenient for Power Pages and Power Automate and Power Apps to access Dataverse. Like I said, all of these tools separately are very powerful, but together, they make a powerhouse. So that's kind of the suite of tools that we're utilizing here at Flexware. And I've mentioned a few different ways that this can be utilized, but I'll let you guys glance over this. One thing I did not touch on are the approval workflows. You can see at the top right-hand side. Approval workflows are a good example of when, I'll use finance, for example. Maybe you have different thresholds of criteria that need to be reviewed or confirmed or approved by a set of people, or, there's one thing after another that needs to be, just double checked. And Power Automate has these approval workflows where you're able to do just that. You can kick off a workflow. It'll do a certain amount of things in that time frame, and then it'll send an alert or wait in process. It's almost like it's pending. And once that approval comes through, it will then move to the next stage, and so on and so forth until that process is completed. So you can see that there are many different ways that you can utilize RPA, data reporting and checking. And all of these things, again, are just to help your business really function at, top tier excellence. And so these are just some ways that we can utilize RPA. And I also wanted to say that, RPA doesn't have a solution for everything. It's not always the right answer. And so that's why, it's our job as experts in this space to really understand the capabilities and limitations of, what RPA can do, and also to listen to the business and really understand their needs. So I have this last slide here before we get into the real world solution examples. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but a lot of, these are the trends that we've noticed, over the past year, and, just with people and their growing interest in RPA. This is what they're noticing. It's scalable. You can use this with many different systems. As I mentioned, you can create those custom connectors. And the end user, the impact that it has on eliminating some of these redundant tasks is sometimes what keeps people at your company. When your company cares about, the end user and the impact that it has on their mental load and, that work-life balance, this is, some of the repetition and things that we can eliminate so that people can be unleashed to focus on those more fulfilling tasks. So this is just a glance at that. And again, Dwayne mentioned that this will be available in PDF format as well, if you'd like to review these later. So now the fun stuff, the real world solutions. So I mentioned before, we have Power Automate and Power Automate Desktop. This is a real example that we implemented for one of our customers. And I'll give you the business use case here and kind of the background before we get into it so you understand. the customer, because of the pandemic and everything, they were producing more than double of their orders with their products. And how they keep track of these products and their orders is in a an e-commerce website. And they were having to have 2 or more people sit at a computer screen with hundreds and hundreds of lines of Excel data. And each row in this Excel file contains a SKU number, a zip code, how many items are included in that order, and similar data related to that. And they're just sitting there for hours on end entering things in. And I don't know about you guys, but it's very easy for me to lose my place in an Excel file, that's hundreds of lines long. And so it turns out that they ended up losing a lot of money because of the data entry mistakes that were made. And so it was just they were looking for a quick solution, what can we do? And, how can we fix this so this doesn't happen again? And it just so happens that we were visiting their site, and they had mentioned, we're looking at some RPA solutions, and, we were able to deliver that for them. And so what our solution involved is we built a Power Automate desktop bot that interacted on the e-commerce website as a human would, and it would intake the Excel files and read each line of data and enter it in respectively where it belonged. And they had a 100% success rate. And not only was that great for their bottom line, but the emotional impact that it had on those end users was phenomenal. They were more than appreciative, and they were wondering why they had not done this sooner. So I will show you a video here in a moment of what this looked like in real time. It's very short, obviously, because it's not the whole process. But as you can see here, and I'll use my mouse, they had an Excel file. In this case, it was many Excel files, hundreds of lines. And the RPA flow would intake that Excel data, enter it into the e-commerce site, and then repeat that process until each line was completed and the orders were fulfilled. And you always have the option to alert the end user and let them know that that process is done, or that they need to review it. And so as you can see on the bottom here, the manual processing time for 2 people was about 1 week, and we were able to bring that down to about 6 hours in total. And so they were able to deliver on time, and like I said, they had a 100% success rate. So I will now play this video for you, and I'm going to kind of let you guys know what's happening here. So on this very first screen, you can already see there is a login, okay? I'll move mine. You can see it navigating around on the screen. And this is all programmed. None of this is magical. This was tested and tried, and there were, mistakes along the way to get this perfect. And you can see how it's navigating, and it's removing the need for a person to sit here for 8 hours on end just typing in data. And you can see here it's entering in the correct labels. And now this data that you see is from the Excel file. So it's entering in, the vendor part numbers, the UPC, how many need to be in there, and it'll continue to do this. And so as you can see, if you were sitting here entering in each line by line, it would be very mundane, and it's very mind numbing. And so, this is how Power Automate Desktop works. And it is just a huge success story, and it is just a really interesting use case. And I had a lot of fun building this, and I can't wait to build more and see what other opportunities we have to automate things using Power Automate Desktop. So that is one example. I will give a moment for you guys to ask any questions in the Q&A, or type those in as Dwayne mentioned, but I'm going to go ahead and continue into the next example. This one is I will do live. And this one is something that can benefit multiple different companies. It's not specific to a client, but the use case here is you receive an invoice or a purchase order, and it comes to your email inbox. And typically what would happen is, you receive that email, you read over the information, and you then enter that invoice into whatever system it needs to live in ultimately. And there's of course room for data entry issues, but the real kicker here is, you don't have to touch anything. It comes to your inbox and you don't need to think about it. It's automatically taken care of for you, and it lives, in the system that it's designated for. And this is very helpful because, as you can see on the bottom, it says there's about 5 to 10 minutes in processing, and it only takes about a minute for the solution to work. Um, but that's not always the case. Sometimes you get something in your inbox and you're busy doing something, and you don't have time to tackle that right now. And that's when RPA can come alongside and aid you, in eliminating that task for you. Um, and so again, I'll review here. So you get the PDF file. This triggers that Power Automate flow. It knows, okay, I've received this information. I need to do something. And we actually use an AI model to scrape the data. And again, this is great because we're storing those values into different variables, and we can check that against confidence scores. And so we're really just ensuring that we have good data. And then ultimately, we move it to that cloud system or that database or whatever ERP system that it's designated for, and you can send an alert. So now you've automated that process end to end, and you no longer have to worry about it. You simply go in and you see, hey, this is done for me. So I will do this live demo now. This is just a review of the steps specifically. And so let's see what happens. So first and foremost, I mentioned you receive an email. So I have a purchase order here. I will open this. This is not sensitive data. This is just play data. But you can see, it contains typical information that you would find, and it has 2 lines, 2 rows of data. And this is important because, what if you have 5 pages? Well, we can do that. We can handle that. That is something that the AI model is designed to do. So this is what a purchase invoice looks like. I'm going to go ahead and email this to myself, and we'll wait just a moment and it'll kick off this flow. But first I want to show you in finance and operations where ultimately this data will go to live. I do not currently have that invoice in here. So I just wanted to show you, that it's empty now, and we can see what this process does. And now that I've received the email, I will continue to refresh here. We can see that this flow has now been kicked off by that email, and I'll open this up. And you can see these are the different REST APIs that we're using. Okay, so right here, this extract information from forms, this is that AI model. And I built this AI model specifically for this formatted purchase invoice. There are many different AI models that you can use, but this one is specifically for PDFs. And then you can notice down here in finance and operations, we have the create record. And this is where that magic happens. We're taking that, information from the AI model. We can see it ran successfully. And then we're creating those records with that same data. I mean, how convenient is that? So now that we know that it's ran successfully in all of 36 seconds, I will refresh, and there's my purchase order. So I have now automated this with no thought. Now, of course, there's development time and testing, but if I'm the end user, I don't have to think about it. This has alleviated some task that I need to do throughout the day. And, it's in real time. What if I receive something at midnight? Same deal. I have those connections. They're always working, and I don't need to be awake to do that. So I wanted to just briefly show right here, we had 2 lines on that purchase order, and there are 2 lines that were inputted in here. So that just goes to show the AI model is very intelligent. It can pick up your data, and it all depends on what you tell it to do and what it does with that data. And ultimately, this is a huge success. Additionally, you can provide attachments to this as well. And this comes in the form of a link, but you can see I have my PDF here. So the end user is now able to just go in and see a list of those pending invoices in here. And they're able to say, okay, these were all processed and submitted on this day, and they're ready to go. And I'm sure other ERP systems as well, but finance and operations has a lot of customizations you can do as well that do things after the data has been entered. So you constantly have these checks and balances that really help ensure that you're doing things efficiently and the best way possible. Okay, so those are the 2 live demonstrations. I know I've gone kind of quickly, but there's still more. Wait, there's more. Um, so I wanted to talk about just kind of what Power Apps looks like as a whole. And this is a Flexware innovation Power application. And as you can see, there are some details on the side here that let you know which button you select, the screen that it'll navigate you to. If you have a new opportunity or you select that button, it will take you to a form where you can then enter in the information for that opportunity. You also have an admin center down here, and this is where you can manage those requests. You can make changes to those requests. You can see who submitted them. Maybe you need to go back and contact someone, but this is a way where you have centralized your data and made it available to the end users, and it's now organized rather than having text messages here and notes there and emails over here, and Teams messages. Instead you can keep it all centralized in one place. So this is just one example of how you can utilize Power Apps. And like I was mentioning before, when you take 2 of these systems and you use them together, then you have a true piece of automation. Power Apps isn't an RPA tool necessarily, but it's very intuitive, and it's a great way to make your data available to other users. Now, I did show you a little glimpse of what the Power Automate flow looked like for that purchase order, but this just goes and shows a little deeper on what you can do. Mainly, I wanted to focus on this condition here. You have an if yes or if no statement, and this is just very simplistic terms. But you have a sequence of steps and you want those to be executed. And this is where you can really handle your error catching and your data handling. If I receive a PDF, as you can see this condition right here, if I receive a PDF, I know that if it contains that .pdf, then I would like to do something down the if yes branch. And you can see there's an AI model there to extract some information, and there are more conditions. If no, and typically you would have some more information in the if no area, don't do anything. I don't want you to do anything with that process. That's it. So, there are, again, checks and balances that you can do, and you can really try to handle those, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Those outliers. So you can handle the outliers and conditions that, this is how the process works every single time, but sometimes it works differently. And so, you have these capabilities built into Power Automate to help handle those outliers. Okay, so that's kind of what Power Automate looks like in a nutshell as well. And then I also wanted to touch on the Power Virtual Agents because I just think it's something that's pertinent in today's age. And so what's interesting about the chatbots is if you can see over here, there are 52 trigger phrases. And the amount of customization that you can do to help your chatbot really understand, what that customer is wanting. You can add in all these different types of phrases. This is, you can say hello 10 different ways, really 52 ways, I'm assuming, because that's how many they have in there. And then, this is a very short example, but you can see on the side after the user says hello, that chatbot responds, and their response is based on what they've received. So, if it said something else like, I'd like to request a statement, the chatbot can react to that differently than it would saying hello, right? So there's just a lot of cool technology that's up and coming. And so, that's really at the heart of automate or die. As silly as that sounds, we are in a digital age. We are moving at the speed of light, with all these new technologies. And so it's really important to keep up, because you will die off with your old technologies, and you'll notice that other companies are, maybe they have better response time, and you're losing business, and you need to figure out, what can we do to help combat, this up and coming, virtual remote kind of world. Um, and so that's kind of the gist behind the automate or die today. Um, and I know that I've gone over this quickly, and there's a lot that we could deep dive into, but this is just the surface level understanding of, how RPA can help your company, and things that you might start thinking about as far as automation goes. And then the add-ons that you have with help from Power Applications and chatbots, you can really help streamline some of your business processes. So this is the end. I wanted to leave some time for Q&A if you guys have any questions. Again, I wanted to thank you all, and I'll open it up.
Thank you, Natalie. You can submit questions by using the Q&A button at the top of the screen. I did have a few questions that were submitted externally, and I've marked those as I added those in. So let me just start from the first one that came in.
Yeah.
What technical expertise would you say someone needs to have in order to develop an RPA? Can a non-technical person,
Mm-hmm.
like an office worker,
Sure.
develop their own RPAs?
Sure. I would say, you can always learn, and so the real thing is not so much how much expertise do I have, but it's really, to understand the business process. If you know that this business process can be automated, you can then go look at that technology that's available and look at the depth that you need to go. Some things, like I said, Microsoft wants to make things a lot of, plug and play, and you can deep dive into a lot of these things. But, if you just want to create an application that hosts forms, there's templates. And additionally, Microsoft has Power Automate templates as well that you can just download and implement those solutions. So, I'd say it varies. If you want to deep dive, you can follow those learning paths and get your certifications, but you can really start anywhere, especially with the documentation that Microsoft makes available.
Okay.
Good question.
One just came in here from Aaron. Do you have governance over the different users and the bots that are created?
Yes, absolutely. So Microsoft heavily uses Azure Active Directory, and within there, and even within the database and Power Apps, you can define, and again, this goes in how deep of development you want to go, but you can absolutely define, I only want reading or writing capabilities for a certain group of people, or maybe you don't want a certain group of people to see anything on an application, but you can absolutely govern, what you would like people to view.
Okay. Do you put in place audits to monitor the accuracy of a bot?
Interesting question. So there are, Microsoft, again, it's almost like they've thought of everything, but they have statistics that you can look at and your efficiency with your runs. And when you're building AI models, they give you accuracy scales. So you can see how accurate your AI model is running through many different, let's say you're scanning PDFs or business cards. You can run through many different tests and it'll tell you the accuracy. And then, there's a management center where you can see the efficiency of your flows. So you can most definitely see where you can improve your flows or where things are failing the most.
Okay. Brandon submitted a couple of questions here. Where does Power Automate run? Is it an on-premise? Is it cloud-based or both?
It is cloud-based, and you have the opportunity to do on-prem. Again, Microsoft has made this an out-of-the-box, very robust solution. So it's cloud-based, but you can do on-prem as well.
And then follow up: are the decisions made logged per transaction?
Interesting question. So I would say the decision making happens from the developer. You need to know what you're doing ahead of time. So, because the bot isn't actively learning on the fly. You have programmed these steps into the bot. And so I would say that, the decision making happens at the human level, as it should. You don't want a bot making financial decisions for you. But hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, and Brandon, if not, you know how to get a hold of us. Be happy to further clarify.
Absolutely.
How complex is it to reprogram a bot? So, for instance, you showed an example of clicking on a button or clicking in a
Hmm.
certain field. What happens when those buttons move on those systems? How
Yeah.
difficult is it to reprogram?
Well, and that's where the expertise comes in with trial and error. That's why you have testing and testing and testing. Um, I wouldn't say it's any more complicated than the original solution. It would just be a matter of having to go back and reconfigure that bot to match those changes. Of course, it can be frustrating for the developer if you've delivered a solution and it's changed all of a sudden. But again, it's not any more difficult than it would be making the original solution.
One other question that came in, somebody emailed it to me. The examples that you used were kind of like back office scenarios,
Hmm.
accounting or maybe human resources, something like that.
Hmm.
Have you done or heard of applications out on the shop floor, or can you think of any scenarios
Yeah.
that may be applicable?
Absolutely. So actually, recently I deployed over 20 applications to one of our clients because they wanted an application per iPad specific for that location in the warehouse. So, I mean, like I said, this is very surface level. So, as much as I want to deep dive into this, there are so many opportunities that you can use with these Power Apps. So absolutely, you can use it on shop floor. You can make it very simple and clean, easy for people to understand, for those who don't have a technical background. But yes, absolutely, you can do that.
Okay. Well, Natalie, there are no other questions that came in, so we'll go ahead and kind of bring this to a conclusion. So, Natalie, thanks so much, not only for today's webinar, but for sharing your expertise with Flexware's customers as you serve on the enterprise solutions team. You guys are doing some great work on that enterprise solutions team.
Appreciate it.
And thanks to everyone who tuned in, not only live, but those who are going to be watching this on demand. Uh, I have no doubt that your mind is probably racing with the types of processes where RPA might be useful for you and your organization. If you'd like some help with that, reach out to me or to Natalie. We'd be happy to make the right connections for you. And just as a final reminder, we'll be sending out a link to this recording, as well as a PDF of the PowerPoint that Natalie used today. Please consider sharing this with your team. And just a suggestion, You might even consider running the video as part of a lunch and learn. Invite your team into a conference room, watch the video, and discuss how this might be useful in identifying some of the processes where RPA could be useful. So I think that's it for now. Thanks everyone again for participating. Thanks again, Natalie. So from Flexware, wish everyone a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.